LSU quarterback Colin Hurley takes a leave of absence from the team. We've got what we know so far. We'll tell you next. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. We are humbled and glad you're with us. Well, on Saturday when LSU played Arkansas, news broke that Colin Hurley, the LSU redshirt freshman quarterback, was not with the team. We reported it at LouisianaSports.net. A week prior, when LSU played Alabama, Hurley did not make the travel roster. Emil Picarella was the third quarterback to travel, along with Garrett Nussmeier, Michael Van Buren, and of course, Juwan Johnson in an emergency role. Well, on Monday at his press conference, Frank Wilson did in fact confirm that Colin Hurley is not with the team, but didn't provide many other details except one key point.
He took a leave of personal related matters. It is temporary right now at this time.
Okay, so temporary is the operative word right there from Frank. So as to say that Colin Hurley is taking a leave from the team, but he has not left the team permanently. It's been a heck of a 10 months for Colin Hurley, as we well know. Shortly after the bowl game a season ago in January, Colin Hurley was injured in a car wreck. We now know he went through an extensive rehab where at first he had to fight for his life and then fight to walk again, and it was unclear if he would ever play football again. We reported also at LouisianaSports.net that at the time of after the accident, he was placed in a medically induced coma. So it was a very sincere situation that Hurley went through. Of course, during spring, at the spring football game, or the spring scrimmage, Colin Hurley surprised his teammates. He was back there, was not participating, but surprised them just with his presence, and then was available throughout all of fall camp. It has been nothing short of amazing, his recovery, and has been with the team up until this point. But according to Frank Wilson, a personal matter, so Colin Hurley not with the team. When LSU played Arkansas on Saturday, Hurley unavailable meant, and obviously Garrett Nussmeier did not play or dress, meant Michael Van Buren was the starter, and then Juwan Johnson and Emil Picarella were available. And Frank was asked on Monday, considering Garrett Nussmeier, well, actually, this is the update. He was asked point blank if Garrett Nussmeier was going to dress this weekend against Western Kentucky.
I know he's going to want to. We're going to defer to our medical staff, our trainers, our doctors, to do what's best for him. If there's any way that he can, I know he's going to want to do so, but I don't have those answers just yet.
Okay, so we are unsure right now if Garrett Nussmeier is going to play this weekend against Western Kentucky, and that's important to note. Remember, and I'll come back to Hurley in a second, but remember, at this point, Van Buren's played in 4 games. So if Van Buren plays in either of the next 2 games, he burns his red shirt. Now, I know Frank Wilson has said they intend to play he and Nussmeier. My contention has been there's no reason to waste Michael Van Buren's a year of eligibility on a backup 2-quarterback system in meaningless games at the end of November when you're not playing for anything of consequence. That changes if Nussmeier is unavailable and Van Buren can start and play the whole season, the whole game, because that gives you an opportunity to evaluate him in totality, like you got this past weekend. By the way, Frank Wilson did give his about a 90-second evaluation of Michael Van Buren's starting performance after watching the film. We'll get to that in a second. But here's Frank on what the backup plan is. So in the hypothetical, with Hurley away from the team and with Nussmeier potentially not dressed, what would they do?
We got a guy that went through the entire spring with us and Juwan Johnson at quarterback all the way into fall camp, who we've been constantly still working as Garrett's injury started to reveal itself even more, to have an emergency plan. And we feel confident about that. We feel confident about Emil being able to step in and get us out of the game if we needed to do so. So we have a contingency plan that we feel confident in.
Okay, so Michael Van Buren, your starter. The other two quarterbacks he mentioned there, Juwan Johnson, and you heard him say Emil, who's Emil Picarella. I'll remind you about Emil in just a second. But Juwan Johnson, remember, is one of the greatest high school athletes in the history of Louisiana, one of the greatest prep careers. He he signed with LSU as a defensive back, and he's just jumped back and forth from defensive back to running back last year when John Emery was injured, and then went back to quarterback this spring, and then moved back to running back whenever JT Lindsey was dismissed from the team. But in his high school career as a quarterback, he set state records with 14,451 total yards and 171 touchdowns. A guy that is certainly capable of leading an offense, and beneficial that he spent the entire spring playing quarterback and much of fall, honestly, as well, and fall as well, until the JT Lindsey situation popped up. They were short at running back, needed another body over there, which is when he sort of transitioned back. But Juwan Johnson has played a good bit of quarterback. Now, Emil Picarella is interesting. He prepped at U-High on the LSU campus. And at one point during his junior season, Picarella was graded out as a top 10 quarterback in the country for the class of 2025. I mean, he was one of the blue chip top tier quarterbacks, 6'2", 210, big arm, all that sort of stuff. Interestingly enough, though, throughout his senior year, for whatever reason, his star rating, his ranking, some of the big name schools that were showing interest, that sort of waned. It was an interesting thing how and why it happened. And so he ended up with some lesser offers, Boston College, G5 offers, which is interesting because early in his career, A&M, Penn State, Miami, Florida State, Oregon, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Kentucky were all on him. And then it ended up just with smaller committable offers later, like Marshall, Houston, Boston College, who we mentioned, Arkansas State, Akron. But he's a guy who has some physical ability and is one of those interesting ones that as his career continues to take shape, you wonder if he may not be one of those players who, and look, his parents are LSU alums, and we interviewed Emil on my radio show whenever he signed with LSU as a preferred walk-on, passing on some of those scholarship opportunities. He may be one of those guys who you would look back in hindsight and say, man, he could have gone small school, played his way into a larger school scholarship with NIL and different things as it may transpire in the portal. But he just wanted to be at LSU. And so he'll continue to grow and prep and prepare and hopefully get his opportunities maybe somewhere down the line at LSU. So we'll see how that goes. But you have Van Buren, who you hope stays healthy and can play the entirety of the game. But those would be your other two options behind Van Buren now, with Colin Hurley on the sideline. Now, Frank Wilson did also compliment Garrett Nussmeier and give an evaluation of Michael Van Buren in his first start at LSU. We'll get to that here in just a second. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And we're brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time and in just a couple of taps saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. I love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So as this continues to take shape, as LSU goes in and through this game week, we know that if Garrett Nussmeier is unavailable, it'll be Michael Van Buren starting again. And Frank Wilson gave a full evaluation of Van Buren with how his first start played out.
Michael's body of work was imperfect, but yet something that we can certainly build on. There were things early in the game, and it's different, right? It's always different when you are the guy that's coming off the bench. The pressure is different. The expectation is different. So for length of time, everybody in their mind want Teddy Bridgewater. Well, Teddy's not better than Drew. Sorry, Teddy. But he's not, right? Drew was the guy. But as he got older, we want Teddy, because he was the backup that came in and looked great. And so there's an adjustment from the guy that comes off the bench compared to the guy who starts and have all the monumental pressure and expectations to live up to. It was the first in Tiger Stadium for Michael, and so it took a minute for it to digest. I think he settled down well. He would want some of those throws back that he makes routinely, because we purposely didn't ask him to do anything over the top. We're going to give you simple ones, and even that, it could become challenging for you in your debut in Tiger Stadium. But I thought he finished in a flurry. I thought he was willing to do whatever it took to help us win the football game. He delivered and gave his best when his best was needed. And so proud of him and the job that he did.
So I think a very honest evaluation of Michael Van Buren there from Frank Wilson on Monday. And, we've kind of had this conversation about 2026 and if it could be Colin Hurley or Van Buren as LSU starter. And my contention has been that, not that I know I don't have any information to share. I'm not breaking news or anything like that. It's just look around the world of college football and quarterbacks don't stay. So if you're Colin Hurley, would you come back for a third year to be a backup again? I don't know. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, Ty Simpson, those guys are the outlier. They're the exception, not the rule. So you would just expect that someone would leave. But this whole conversation around Van Buren and the quarterback position for 2026 could get very interesting if Nussmeier doesn't play the next two games and Van Buren gets 3 full games of evaluation. What if he plays really well against Western Kentucky? You go to Oklahoma and he plays well against that Oklahoma defense. Do you continue to see a very high ceiling for Van Buren? Flip side, what if he doesn't play well the next 2 weeks? Does that maybe shape the decision you make this offseason and what you might do in the portal? And of course, there's going to be a new coach. So how might that play out? Well, the one other thing that Frank Wilson said was a big hat tip to Garrett Nussmeier and the job he's done taking all of this in.
I don't know if you guys had a chance to see him on the sideline. I was so proud of him and his leadership and how he stood by his teammates, how he encouraged Michael through the duration of the game, as well as the entire offense and defense. He delivered in a way that was so monumental in the psyche of our team, that even though he was down, he was not out. And so his contributions were significant for the morale of our football team, for the mindset of our football team. To say that he played courageously throughout the year is probably an understatement. I wasn't always privy to the injuries and the things that he was going through, but he went through a lot. He persevered through a lot. He pushed through an awful lot to give our team, himself, every opportunity to be our best. I commend Garrett for that and what he did in this year, which I thought was extremely courageous.
Extremely courageous, played through a lot. A guy whose legacy at LSU will be somewhat complicated because on one hand, we respect tremendously the fact that he stayed. In an era where guys don't stay, Garrett Nussmeier stayed. had the second greatest passing season in the history of the program, but it was on an 8-win team. And then with all the expectations this year, for whatever complexity of reasons, the torso injury, scheme, inability to run, all of it, it just didn't come together this year. And so you have a very disappointing season as well. But hopefully in time, LSU fans will be able, and Garrett Nussmeier's legacy will be one we remember fondly for a guy that loved LSU, stayed, persevered, and gave his all for LSU in an era where it matters much more to most guys about the name on the back than the front, so to speak. Garrett Nussmeier, you can never argue that. He has always been an LSU first guy, and we commend him. Now, in the meantime, we'll continue to follow the Colin Hurley storyline to see if and when he does, in fact, return to this LSU football team. Remember, as you look at the quarterback numbers for next year, the only two scholarship quarterbacks you have, in theory, would be Van Buren and Hurley. If Hurley does not return for whatever reason, then you're down to one scholarship quarterback and none committed for 2020, the freshman class of 2026, meaning LSU is going to have a lot of work to do with whoever the new head coach is to rebuild that quarterback room. We'll be here talking about it every single day on Locked on LSU. Hey, thanks so much for making this your first listen. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And thank you for making the Locked on Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Until next time, it's Locked on LSU, your team every day.